what is just screaming in my face right now that used to not be is that, hey, you have children, man. Like, your children need you. They need you to not sit idly. You know what I mean? They need you to get active in whatever this looks like. And I think that all of this doom and gloom that's happening right now can definitely be crushing and can definitely be like scary, but it can also snap to life, new agents. And I think that that's also possible. So like sometimes it might even be necessary. We're entering the potential for a total shift into a different way of organizing.
Hello and welcome to 21st Century Vitalism. This is a podcast exploring how we can best maintain a sense of energy, inspiration, and wakefulness while navigating these uncertain and often challenging times. My name is Brett Kane, and I'll be your host on this journey as we have a multidisciplinary conversation with a wide variety of speakers from all over the world. This typically includes spiritual teachers, somatic therapists, artists, environmentalists, just about anyone else who I feel is bearing this torch well. Today's episode is no different, as we are going to be joined by the one and only Anthony Thogmartin. For those of you who aren't in the know, Anthony is the singer and guitar player for the band Papadosio. He's also the lead educator behind the Seed to Stage platform, which is geared toward helping aspiring students learn how to make music using the Ableton software, which is actually the program that I use to edit this podcast in. Beyond his dedicated career in music, Anthony is what I would consider a large-scale systems thinker. This conversation exemplifies that exceedingly well as we explore the multifaceted polycrisis that is facing down our world. This dialogue covers a lot of ground, ranging from AI technologies, world economic systems, and utilizing art as a vehicle to enact real, lasting change. For you Papadosio heads, we also talk about the band's announced hiatus and its implications for the members. If you find this exploration as fascinating as I did, definitely check out Anthony's work, as many of these themes are woven throughout his art. I'd recommend Papadosio, as it's probably one of my favorite bands, but his side project, Earthcry, is also nothing to shake a stick at. If you want to start making your own music, feel free to head on over to seed2stage.com and get a jump start on your journey there. Beyond this episode, I want to announce that I've also taken the production reins on a second podcast. It's a huge honor to let you all know that I'm going to be helping out with my meditation teacher, David Nickturn, over on his show, Creativity, Spirituality, and Making a Buck. That's an exploration of how we can harmoniously integrate our creative expression, our spiritual practice, all within our careers. It's a fun time, and since I've been on board, we've had some great guests, such as Susan Piver, Sharon Salzberg, and Krishna Das. It's good stuff. Check it out wherever you tune into your podcasts. Last but not least, if you're digging what we're putting out through this platform and want to lend your support, head on over to patreon.com/21st Century Vitalism and consider becoming a member. If finances are tight, that's totally understandable, and you're welcome to subscribe over on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, or like us on Facebook. Any and all interaction is seen and deeply, deeply appreciated. So that's it for today's housekeeping. Without further ado, please sit back, drink some tea, maybe do some stretches, but most importantly, open up your hearts for Anthony Thogmartin. All right, Anthony, hello. Welcome back to the show. I just want to start by saying thank you so much for joining me again. It has been a couple years since you've been on, so it's great to have you on. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. A lot of life has happened, huh? I think it was like 2022, maybe even earlier than that. But yeah, there's been some pretty big shifts in your life, in the world, my life.
Sure
I guess just to start, like, how are you finding yourself feeling these days?
Well, I guess maybe a principal difference since the last time we spoke is that now we have a second child, and it's a little girl. And she's she's a sweet little angel. She sleeps through the night, which is pretty uncommon for an infant. I mean, yeah, it having children really puts things into perspective. And I've noticed that there's like somewhat of a relating gap between people that have children and people that don't, and that's been an interesting thing to navigate. Um, your friend circles can expand, and sometimes they can shrink, and sometimes they
Yeah.
can just shift between groups. Fortunately, like a lot of the people that we're surrounded with, even if they don't have children, are very warm and receptive to it and welcoming. And yeah, it's we're just we're happy.
Yeah.
Things are. I mean, like it's so interesting. Like if you could just turn all this stuff off, you know, like life is great. Um,
Yeah.
it's when you are connected to these stories and lenses and confusing crazy information overloads like is when things can really start to go awry. But I've just noticed that like if I just step back and like think about like where we are and how lucky our family is, and just yeah, I don't know, like we had a crazy storm. That's something that's happened since I last talked to you. And this is literally ground zero, like right here. We're super lucky that our house didn't wash off the side of this mountain. Um, you know, one point of view could be that we have been in a consistent calamity over the last really 5 years, but like that's really only one like perspective. Another perspective could be that we're super lucky to be able to continue to live our creative lifestyle. So yeah, I mean, uh, yeah, I didn't mean to like veer off too far there, but yeah, it's a complex answer to a simple question. Like
Yeah.
we're doing good.
Yeah. I wouldn't trust it if it wasn't complex in these times. It is an interesting thing as somebody who doesn't have kids watching people that I care about make that decision and then the subsequent changes that they have to go through to really step into that role. And I've always kind of been of the accord that, I want to support my friends and my community members who make that choice. And if I can just be like the best uncle type figure that I can be, because it really is, it's one of those like really primal, important human things that I think kind of to what you're saying, it really changes the lens in which you look out at the world. You actually have this living, breathing, growing, changing being that is really forcing your attention away from all of these stories and these narratives that our devices are trying to get us hooked to. So it's really a beautiful thing, and it's this long arc of human evolution that has been the primary lens is just parenthood and being able to be in the moment with a being that is looking at you and you are their whole world, and that invites you into that. It's really cool to be able to see just my friends make these choices and kind of go down that path.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's truly wonderful, and I think a lot of folks have this like perception, that the world is too dangerous, to bring a child into it. And I mean, what I usually end up saying to that is like, can you point me to a time in history when it was less dangerous or less precarious or,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there could be an argument that we are in potentially one of the more precarious times, but like in terms of like the quality of human life, especially in the United States, like let's be real, this is probably still the best time to be a human being here in terms of your like your existential threat level. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're probably gonna make it, and you're probably gonna not starve. So that's kind of, yeah, as far as like human life goes, a pretty good deal.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of amazing the stability, the relative stability that we've had to enjoy as Americans for quite a while now. And again, that's not for every community, but for a pretty large swath of us to be able to have that ability to be free from danger and to have food on the table and actually like eat like kings and queens. When you like compare it to like medieval times or any other time in history, the fact that I can go to the store and get some lobster or eat a pineapple or something like that, like there's actually so much to still be celebrated right now. And I think right now with, again, these narratives that are being propelled to us, by our devices, there's a lot of doomerism that kind of goes on. And I think that some of that is very warranted and important to bear attention to, but also at the same time to have the resource of just these very earthy things. The fact that we have security and food, and there's a resource in that I think we should always maintain contact with if we have it available.
Yeah, big time. I mean, it's truly amazing. And at the same time, I wonder how many people could find that grocery store if they didn't have a cell phone. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like that's also true. You know, like at the same time, like it's wild. Like it's wild how many things are happening at the same time. We live in like this really strange convergence, um, access, but like we are passing off our understanding of the world to little boxes, you know, and we're you know we're rapidly entering a phase. I even saw a study recently where somebody was saying like, you know, folks using like Chat GPT were showing like lower cognitive like ability, and like
Yeah, I
in
saw
terms of
that too.
like, well, yeah, of course, like how is this like news to anyone? I don't know why we had to even have a study, you know. I've recently like just been wondering like how many people even want that. Have you ever thought about that? Like how many people want AI technology? Like I'm not like a Luddite. Like I teach technology. That's like my, you know, thing. Like I'm just curious what I'm so curious. I might even like, you know, make a big post about it. I just want to know like how many people actually want what's happening, you
Yeah.
know? Like it doesn't seem like it doesn't feel like a desirable future, and maybe it's because of my own experience. Um, I, I think like as an artist, we may feel specifically targeted by these technologies, and I think that that's totally fair to say. But not to not to transition into this like, but this is something that's just salient on my mind. Like people will say, well, you know, when the shovel came out, you know, the guy that used to dig with his hands was that shovel, you know, that's the devil's whatever, you know, and then, you know, somebody grabs an ox and he keeps whipping it, and then they're like, you know, you should forage, you know, and then it keeps going on forever and ever and ever, you know, and they
Yeah.
say like there's nothing different at all about this, you know, this time we find ourselves in. But like, I mean, AI is like legitimately like different than all of these other things because, you know, if you go to a town with a bunch of shovels, then everyone has the same ability. But if you are a developer of this technology, much less a bankroller of this technology, much less a private equity firm, much less a, you know, like people have the most outsized power with these systems, social media systems, AI systems, Palantir, like all this stuff. Like people have such an outsized amount of power with this that nothing like this has ever happened before, and it's completely different. And like, I think we've kind of just been sold a kind of a like, hey, look what you can look at this neat thing that you can do. Well, meanwhile, like you know, there's like a I mean, I watched this. Let me back up a little bit. I watched this video today when I was dropping lyric off, and it was this guy that was like trying to explain world debt. He was like, you know, the United States has, you know, X amount of dollars of debt, you know, 30 trillion, whatever the hell it is, whatever unspeakable number that no one could ever like fathom because it's so much money that like if you stacked bills, $100 bills, on top of each other, you would be able to go back and forth to the moon with how much like, you know, debt. He was basically saying like, you know, um, the reason that there's so much debt is because, you know, it's kind of the vehicle for governments to be able to accomplish things and to stimulate the economy and things like that. And he talked about how, you know, even though, you know, the United States owes however many trillion, 70% of that is actually owned by Americans, you know what I mean? And he kept
Mm.
going on and on and on. He was talking about how 30% of it is owned by other countries, all this other stuff. He kept going on and on and on. And he got to the end of the video, and I'm just like, okay, like you didn't answer the fundamental question. that's here. And it's not so much that, like, it's complicated. Basically, his answer was that it's complicated. You know what I mean? It's complicated that the world has debt. And what it really like came down to for me was that that was his conclusion, as opposed to, well, who exactly owns the debt? It's not just that 70% of Americans, which Americans own that debt. And then if you zoom out to the rest of the world, that, China is like, and people talk about how like China is like this, like, sort of opposite approach to the United States. But like, if you look at their financial system, it's very similar. There's lots of debt. The government has lots of debt. And what it really comes down to is that, like, every country has lots of debt. And what we're essentially doing, and like the takeaway from all of this is that, for me at least, is that the fundamental question of our time is who owns that debt. And it's people that own things. And if we were to look at, graphs of like people that own things versus people that don't, like, that is sort of the main story characterizing sort of like the direction that all of this is headed. And the other aspect of it is that, like, debts are promises to be able to acquire something in the future. So what does that mean? That means, money and material and energy and like all this stuff that we literally don't have, but we're promising to each other in the future. So like, yeah, life is good right now for sure. And like, things are incredible. And it's like so amazing to be a human. And like, all of that is true. And it is also true that we live in the most precarious time of probably ever. Because like, at some point, energy won't be as cheap as it is now, like, if we don't want to let other countries have access to, for example, like nuclear energy, if we don't want to give that access because it's too dangerous or too scary, then they're going to burn coal because they're going to run out of access to natural gas, and because eventually it's going to be too expensive to mine for crude oil. And it's like, so it's like, it's so funny that like we stated this like years and years and years ago. E.O. Wilson talking about how like you have a finite planet, you have finite resources, you literally can't. We've promised ourselves, I think at this point we've promised, he coined the term overshoot, I think, but we've promised ourselves probably at this point probably 5 or 6 times over what the planet can provide. And so what does that mean? Does that mean next week? Does that mean 100 years from now? Does that mean that somebody will be able to fly a rocket and be able to like mine off of an asteroid? I think that the fact of the matter is that anyone that makes a claim about whether one thing is going to happen over another, that's the fundamental flaw. Like, nobody knows what's going to happen. I think that a lot of people, whenever they hear this kind of thing, they, like you brought up the term doomerism or whatever, but it's like, I think that just like with COVID, when everyone was like, sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, exactly what was happening, whatever camp that they found themselves in, I think coming to terms with unsureness is like a power move for humans now. To be okay with having an open enough mind to be able to pivot quickly and be able to like absorb more understandings of the world is like the central theme that keeps appearing. You know what I mean? Like, just like with anything, like we know that there was like all kinds of like subversive kinds of things happening when it comes to the funding of these vaccine companies and things like that. We know all that's true, but we also know that like almost every major government in the world implemented, things to keep people at home so that they wouldn't spread the disease so fast that it wouldn't overwhelm hospitals. Both of these things are true, but so few humans can hold those two things in their mind without it becoming, a shit show. So many people can't say, the fact that RFK right now is fighting for, I think it was this week where they're trying to figure out how to remove pharmaceutical commercials from TV. But TV, nobody watches TV anymore. It's just the old folks, and they can't. I think it accounts for something like 5% of all spending that revenue that comes in for network television is from pharmaceutical companies.
Wow.
But people can't hold it in their minds that this administration could do anything good, right? They can't do it. We physically are at the point where we can't admit that Donald Trump, for example, had a good impulse when he said, "Hey, there's IP theft happening in China." Like that's true. Like, and the way that the administration is going about it is, in my view, completely terrible. And collaboration and trade that's open is kind of the way of the future and the obvious way, path to peace, so on and so forth. All I'm saying is that, like, I have noticed that our inability to hold a complex and nuanced opinion about the world without like these pre-existing identities trying to force us into one camp or the other. It's crazy how tribalism is so prevalent in what we would consider advanced technology, advanced social technology, AI, and so on and so forth. It seems like inbuilt into the system, tribalism, which is why I don't believe that AI is this quantum leap at all, because it's programmed on our tribalism and it feeds us our tribalism. And, until we can, I have so much optimism about this stuff. Like I'm optimist. I'm an optimist because I believe that all of this is getting old so fast. I even saw a YouTube video title recently. I want to watch it, but it's something I've just been saying in my head. It's like, a lot of musicians are afraid of AI being able to, make production music for whatever. And it's like, if there isn't a story associated with the music, I don't care. And neither do you, and neither does anyone else. Like the moment that AI makes the most convincing song ever and it's like a hit, everyone's gonna be like, okay, we saw that. Moving on. There's no story. No one cares. Who cares? Like it doesn't matter if it's even catchy, Maybe it's funny and maybe we'll have a laugh about it, but like this is culture. Humans live on story and we need story. And so I guess where I wanted to bring this, rant that I just went on to is essentially that like, I am sort of finding myself like trying to figure out where I can thread the needle of being somebody that still has somewhat of a voice, and how to use it in a way where, it's not this black and white, I even got approached by some party Democrats here in Asheville recently, and they were talking about like the party, and I've in the past been invited to different things, and I'm just not interested in that. I'm just not. I can't find myself being interested in the traditional way of looking at all this. It just doesn't. It's incompatible with my my mind. And it's not as if like I'm better. I'm not better. I'm just like, I just find myself agreeing with lots of different human impulses, and they all have value. And like, I really want to live in a world where we can, like, for example, call a spade a spade. Like we have a convicted felon who paid for sex and then paid for the person to shut up, and somehow the Christian community supports this person. These are incompatible thoughts to me, like it's an incompatible situation. We also are probably about to find out, or maybe we will never find out, about how so many folks in government were involved with Epstein, like it's crazy that we literally can't know these things. Or at least we've created the story that if we do know these things, then, our modern society is going to fall apart. But I don't know. I just feel like we're ready to look at something new. I feel like we're ready for somebody to get out there and say, that the way that we have divided culture into these boxes is fundamentally incompatible with like modern life. It's literally incompatible. It only leads to civil war. It only leads to bad things. It only leads to global conflict and all that stuff. So sorry for
No, I mean, it really threads the needle of a lot of the topics that I actually wanted to talk about. You just consolidated it all into one very cohesive thread. The thing that really strikes me about a lot of that is the imperative of kind of like regulating the nervous system, and I'll kind of explain that a little bit. I think we tend to kind of lean into tribalism as a way of protection. It's like a very, very primitive kind of wiring, that has allowed us to kind of pass our genes onward by trusting people who we know will be able to support us, and then discerning who is kind of an enemy. So like that is one of like the most primal, fundamental orientations in the world as we move our way through. And I think that while we do have this very advanced technology in the society with all of its very elaborate cultural trappings and expressions, we still fundamentally are kind of like the apes that were kind of crawling out of the treetops, who are still trying to discern, is something safe, is something not safe. And with the amount of feedback that we have in our culture, and also through technology, and the fact that we're all tuning into a lot of stories that are very heightened, intentionally so, I think it's really rattling these primitive hardwirings, and it makes it really hard to not side with a tribe. Even if certain members of the tribe kind of go against the values of the tribe, we still kind of group up with numbers. So it's just really interesting that we're still motivated by these very primal circuitries that are keeping us from being able to hold space for both the possibilities of something to be true. I think to have that is kind of a privilege. It takes having a bit of space to be free from potential danger, and to be able to kind of like understand the self, and to be able to understand how we perceive reality, which in itself is really quite a new adventure in human cognition. It's really something that, I mean, for the everyday person to be able to have access to teachings that allow them to understand, oh, this is my mind. Like, oh, I have this bias towards people who are similar to me, and I'm naturally afraid of people who are dissimilar, and maybe that other person actually isn't as bad, even though they are very different than me. It takes, I think, a sense of like educating people and a sense of stability and coherency within a society to be able to raise each individual to that place to where there's kind of a mass of people who are able to do that. And I think for me, that's kind of where like the change is able to move beyond that tribalism and into this way of relating with life that is less reactive and more introspective and more thoughtful. And yeah, I just, with the advent of AI, I think, as you're kind of saying, I think it's going to create a big wave, but I think that wave will subside in the same way that social media kind of has. I think we've already started to kind of metabolize what social media is and worked it into our day-to-day in a way where it's not really as novel as it once was. Still influencing us quite a bit, but we also kind of know, I mean, it's pretty well understood at this point that, like, yeah, we're existing within these echo chambers. And I think it just takes enough people having that understanding to be able to start to play creatively with the forces that are here in a way that hopefully can exponentially kind of wake people up and allow people to see beyond this kind of duality that we've set ourselves up with. But again, at the same time, there's a lot of structural issues that prevent people from attaining that kind of nervous system. That's where a lot of legislation kind of comes in, and where like the fight for social justice is like actually really important. And I hate that the modern or the mainstream conversation right now is really thrown away. They're like, oh, we can't talk about race, we can't talk about gender, and it's like, but actually, like, these are kind of the battle lines where people's nervous systems are getting activated because they're getting encroached upon. So I don't know if any of that has bounced in.
Well,
in your
certainly.
head.
I mean, like, we are witnessing the, like, we have we have an administration and a president who's perfectly comfortable with finding where the rub is between these, what would be considered an in-group and out-group dynamic, and then driving a wedge between them on purpose and smacking the hammer as hard as possible to divide people more and more. And like, this is a fundamentally un-American idea, and like it's dangerous, because if you were to talk to anyone that you disagree with, and if you could remove the thing you disagree with out of the conversation, then you would find that likely 98% of the value system that you have is the same as theirs. And I think that's a really hard thing to understand for people, but it's true. You know, I live in a somewhat rural area, and one of the greatest friends I've made recently is completely opposite of me politically and has a completely different, and I think that a flaw on the left recently has been that you can't talk to those people, or that you can't relate, or that, like, because they are uncomfortable by something that is new to them, that they are somehow less of a person. Like, I would challenge the idea that, like, this isn't a self-made problem. I think that the left has made this problem bigger than it needs to be. I think that that's why the left lost. I don't think that the left is fundamentally wrong for wanting to pursue social justice. It's a noble pursuit. But to make it so that there is now an outgroup of people who are simply just trying to wrap their heads around the idea of, for example, just blanket homosexuality, multiculturalism. Like, I know that this is something that is American, deeply American, and should be deeply American. And some of our greatest traditions are from non-white people. And like, and we need to, like, it's almost like the left wants to be right more than they want to see the change actually enacted. And that is a fundamental flaw. And what is going to prevent, and what has unfortunately empowered these insanely dangerous people. You know what I mean? Like Donald Trump had no business winning the presidency at all. But because it was so terribly executed, because the Democrats are so unbelievably like sure of themselves, so dug in, so like completely disconnected also from our main struggle. The main struggle of the United States is not so much a social issue, because the main struggle of the United States is mainly an economic issue. And like, that is used to be at least the main focus of the party, right? Like, and what's weird is that, like, Donald Trump and his whole, compadre figured out a way to leverage that, and I mean, people, it's crazy how many people buy the idea that, you can make rich people richer and somehow that'll make you better. It's crazy that people still buy that. But um if we could just talk about the most salient issues that affect everyone's lives, that change everything. Like, if a smaller and smaller amount of people have access to resources, then what that does for me, at least the way that I see it, is that removes the diversity of ideas. Like, diversity of ideas is what saves us. Like, we want to, the right wants to say, if we empower the people that are the most busy and the most, like, they accomplish the most, they have the most money, we empower those people, then we're gonna win. But the truth is that, like, we are entering the most complex, you know part of human life, and this is probably maybe the most complex it'll ever be. And I believe that it will actually go the opposite direction, and things will be less complex, because these systems will break. There is no way to keep them going for much longer.
Yeah.
And that's not me being a doomer. In fact, I would say that potentially, if we don't create a chemical disaster or a nuclear disaster or anything like that, then it's possible that life will be better, that food will be better, that, like, relationships will be much stronger, and people's friend groups will be much bigger, and like that the overall quality of life could actually go up in the future, because people are not so taken by default ideologies and default identities. I guess what I wanted to point to is that, like, we have a lot of work to do, and what is just screaming in my face right now that used to not be, is that, hey, you have children, man. Like, your children need you. They need you to not sit idly. You know what I mean? They need you to get active in whatever this looks like. And I think that, like, all of this doom and gloom that's happening right now can definitely be crushing and can definitely be, like, scary, but it can also wake and snap to life, new agents, and I think that that's also possible. So like, sometimes it might even be necessary. We're entering the potential for a total shift into a different way of organizing. We're witnessing, for example, the Chinese system working for a lot of people, like a lot of people. That's the thing that I think is the most impressive, and maybe the least talked about thing is that, like, China's own population is so massive, right? And the quality of life for a Chinese person has jumped through the roof, you know what I mean, in a record amount of time. I mean, and so you have to respect the ability for that to happen, utilizing a governmental system that we think is fundamentally incompatible with like planet Earth and physics. Like, we don't think that it's possible, but it obviously is.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird being in an empire that's declining, and I think it's hard for people to understand that that's what's happening. It's hard for them to understand also that there's no way to stop that, you know. And it's all like, my mom said something years back that really helped me. She said, all change feels like loss, and like, I that's so true. It's still so true. It still rings to me, like, things being different doesn't, like, you have to think these things all the way through. Like, things being different doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's bad. Things, like, you know, does are people in Germany having a bad time right now? I don't think so. Like, they're an empire that absolutely declined, right? And yeah, things were pretty rough for a little bit. But now look at German life, and
Yeah.
really, throughout the years, the Germans have, you know, been sort of at the forefront of a lot of global engineering and have designed a lot of really interesting things and creative stuff. And they came out of a terribly fascist, uh, situation that, like, is legendary. And it's really funny that, like, we don't, for some reason now we're like, oh yeah, that was okay, like, even though we pretty much are setting ourselves up for a repeat experience right now. Like, we're
Yeah.
like, that was fine. But I mean, at the end of the day, look at where they are now. And in fact, I've even heard that recently people have been buying German bonds because they're worried about America's ability to even pay back its own lending. Like, isn't that wild? That's just such a
Yeah.
wild
Yeah.
position to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an important thing for America to be able to move through something like this because we've really been riding high on the accomplishments of like our effort in World War II. Like we really held on to that identity of like, yeah, we came in and we helped, and now we're the best at everything forever. And I think that like in the American psyche, that American exceptionalism has really kind of created a sense of like. We're very placated. We're very kind of docile in a way. And I think that when we're really faced with something that's quite intense, such as the current administration and the very real threat of autocracy taking over in what we had thought was kind of an immortal empire, I think it really does kind of create a spark within people that, we mentioned before the show you were watching Andor. It's very in our psyche, this kind of resistance, rebel kind of figure, and that we've always kind of viewed America as the inherent good guy. And I think that that really just brings it all home, and not just in a cultural way, but in a personal way. Now we're all having to ask ourselves, like, well, what would I do in that situation? Well, now I'm seeing how I would respond to that, and there's a lot of space for creativity there. It's like Frodo being invited to carry the ring to Mount Doom. It's like we all have whatever is within our immediate ecosystem. We all have our ring and we all have our Mount Doom that we can be walking to. Could look like just campaigning for a local office. It could just be donating your time at a soup kitchen. Could be making music. Like, what are you going to do in response to the current situation? Because there are elements that are quite dark and quite dangerous for many people, but I really think it can be a really wonderful wake-up call for people to step into just more of their power rather than being afraid. But again, it all comes down to where your privilege of having a stable nervous system is at, which is why I got into like manual therapy, which I don't know if I've talked to you about since we've last kind of had an exchange.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so I mean, you knew that I was kind of doing the music thing, but
Mm-hmm.
I had this kind of spark of just wanting to be a support for people who are a little bit rattled in their system. And for me, that's my ring, that's my Mount Doom, is to be able to learn how to embody myself in a way that's coherent and stable, and to be able to share that with other folks. And I think it just looks like whatever your own unique dharma is. And I think that it's an invitation because things are going to get more complex, more obvious, and it's just going to be harder to stay asleep, I think.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Speaking, it's funny. Speaking of Andor, I mean they have a. I mean, I'm not sure if the guy is French. I don't know what the name of the actor is, but that they definitely are calling on like the sort of like French Revolution kind of like feel in the show, which is interesting. It's also interesting that they like have the senator. Actually, this is a spoiler, so listeners, if you're still wanting
Uh-oh.
to watch the show, spoiler alert: the senator at one point in the show is like uh, calling out the murder of the Gormans as a genocide,
Mm,
and it's so timely and really, really odd that like that happened. You know what I mean? Like in the
yeah.
show, you have to think that likely at least the beginnings of what was happening in Israel was like in Palestine and Gaza was potentially occurring during the shoot, maybe right before it happened.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah, it's a interesting. It's just crazy that like that's sort of like what like the parallels between what's happening in the world and in America and the show is it's just odd that things are so similar.
Yeah. So I
Um,
want to ask for you, we kind of talked about it before, you and your band Papadosio are about to be going on hiatus. So personally for you, I'm curious, what is your ring and your Mount Doom at this current chapter? As it is also, there's something about that for, I think, the fans who have really came to rely on the Papadosio environment as a resource and as their primary community. There is something that I find to be really interesting and serendipitous about the fact that you are all making that decision to take a break for a little bit. Um, and I think that again provides some space for people to kind of lean into their own stories a little bit more. But I'm just curious about how do you plan to respond to the call that is kind of coming out right now?
so okay, so I mean, there's a number of things happening in my life right now. First of all, I've discovered the joy of teaching music, um, and mainly music technology and empowering people to make art using software. I have a YouTube channel called Seed the Stage, and that is something that like has been. I didn't even expect it really to do what it has done. There's like now like I think 120,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's gotten like truly bigger than anything I've done in my life in terms of like
Wow.
people paying attention to it and how many people it reaches and how global it is. I have a Discord for members who join into the courses that I have, and it's a global community. At one point, I could be talking to someone from Japan. The next minute, I'm talking to someone in Germany, and the next minute I'm talking. It's just it's truly awesome, and that is that's something that I can offer on like a technical level, and still on like a I mean even as far as like on a spiritual level, like I have a songwriting course that and this is not a I hope that this is not taken as a pitch.
Oh, pitch it.
I'm literally just like talking about this thing that I'm doing. It in and of itself is like it really scratches a lot of musical itches for me. So that's like one thing. Another thing is that I want to expand the Earthcry project, which is like my side project, not to be like more popular or anything like that, but I like to figure out ways to leverage music to do good things in the world. Um, and the most recent project was I put out an album, and I had this whole scheme where if you bought the album for $5, I bought whoever bought the album for $5 a $20 gift certificate to, actually it's close to you, a I think Wisconsin based seed supplier that has one of the most in depth websites for being able to identify what wildflowers grow in your area. Um, and so they had this one blend called Insectopia, which basically encourages, um, it's just like a wildflower group. So it's like groupings of different wildflowers that are native to North America that encourage the right kind of insects and predators to kind of recreate like what America was before we came in here and
Oh,
monocropped the crap out of it.
oh, that's
So
sick.
like something that again I struggle with the potential that the things that I say may be considered doomer like kind of stuff, but it's really not where I'm trying to go. We are experiencing a conservatively between 1 and 2% decline of all insect abundance and mass every single year in the world. And that is alarming because insects are the they're the food source for everything. Without insects, we have nothing. Without insects, we have no food. Uh, Not because we eat insects necessarily, even though I think that we may want to start considering how we can do that because they're so efficient at creating protein. But we legitimately can't make it without insects. I mean, maybe roaches will continue to live, but like in general, insect abundance. Something that maybe your listeners, if they're interested in this, they can look up the Xerxes Foundation. They have a lot of really interesting infographics to kind of explain this emerging realization that we're having. And so, you know, Earthcry has like this like even in the name has this like interesting impetus to, you know, like do good things, and in the same vein as like, you know, Papadosio, like um you know, it's very difficult to do uh philanthropic work when it comes to being able to fund it with a band because unless you've been living under a rock, like pretty much every touring band at some point has had an interview somewhere where they're like, "Yeah, touring's really hard, blah blah." You know, like it's not as easy to do as it once was, blah blah. So you know, there's not really a lot of extra capital freed up revenue coming in to be able to like do things like that. But when you're, you know, when you're a solo artist, like you know, and we have experienced a decent amount of success here, especially with the courses that I teach. That I've been trying to figure out ways that I can actually be effective. And so something that's interesting is that with that Earthcry project, now over 110 people did the deal, right?
Oh,
They
wow.
and so my guess is that if a third of them actually went through with it and put the seeds in the ground, think about the difference that has made. You know, like
Yeah.
that's amazing. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I'm just trying to actually show that, like, you know, my investment, I think, in this is still like under, I think when I like figured it up, is still like under like $1,500, right? But like
Mhm.
the amount of life that is going to happen out of that little thing, if anything, I just want this to like be encouraging to people that are trying to like make something awesome happen, because like you can, it's like it's not as hard as it sounds. Like really, if you are paranoid about the state of the world, just grab yourself a $20 Insectopia bag from um, prairiemoon.com and go outside, especially this fall. It'd be the best time to do it. Especially if you found a place that is damaged. This stuff is considered weeds by most people, but to the way that the planet works, it is actually like a direct panacea to
Yeah.
what occurs. Like these plants literally eat poisons. They grow where nothing else can. They supply food for insects, which supplies food for fish, which supplies nutrients for trees, which supplies, it's literally like lifeblood. And like you can do that right now. Is it going to, is it going to, get Donald Trump out of the presidency? Of course not. You know what I mean? But like,
Unless a bunch of mosquitoes come with malaria and then go to
yeah,
Washington,
Well,
maybe that'll
see,
happen.
here's the thing: if you don't like mosquitoes, like plant wildflowers because then you invite predators that can eat the mosquitoes. You invite life that, like, we used to walk around in bare feet. People, it's funny. Like we'll go hiking sometimes and we'll be in bare feet, and people walk. They're like, "Wow, you got some strong feet, man." And it's like, so do you actually.
That's what
You
they were
you have
designed
strong
for.
feet. You just literally have atrophied your ability to walk here. Like a lot of my friends will hike barefoot a lot more than I will, but once you get above like I think it's like 4,000 feet around here, there's nothing spiky, nothing unless there's rocks, of course. But no plants are creating like anything that's gonna you know rupture your skin. And there's this like just this nice feeling of being barefoot in the woods for a long period of time. And a lot of people have a lot of things to say about it. Some people assume that it's got some sort of like special properties. I don't really know about
Earthing.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
about that, but I do know that like we as humans like have these atrophied capabilities that I think could also be lending to the present calamity. Like
Yeah.
that there's some sort of informational flow that can get cut off when we don't have a open mind about what we're capable of and like what it took to get here. And also like we don't think about the fact that like we are epically more sedentary than we ever were before.
Yeah.
I wish I could find this thing, but there was a guy that made like a story where he was like, if all of human life was summarized into just a 75-year-old person's life, like say they lived to be 75 and they died. It's something interesting. It's like in the last 2 weeks we discovered oil. In
Yeah.
the last 30 minutes we had computation. In the last like you know what I mean? Like it's like nothing about how we live is like anywhere remotely close to what our genetics and body are designed to do. So like yeah, like I think we really, when we talk about the person that is going to do the next thing, that person has to kind of just actively reject the notion that any of this is normal or that any of this is like functional even.
Yeah.
We just have to sort of like instead understand that like we live in a interesting thing. One of my favorite thinkers has a podcast called The Great Simplification. Nate Hagens. He
Hmm.
calls what has happened recently the he calls it a pulse, an energy pulse, discovering ancient forests turned into fuel that we can burn. We can take it around in buckets and burn it places. Like that is only going to happen once. Never going to happen again. Once we burn it all, it's to the point where it's too expensive to mine. We'll never have it again. So, you know, like this is a pulse that we're experiencing. This is a party. This is a fossil fuel party that we are so privileged to be able to live in. It's allowed us to create twice as many humans as we would have otherwise. Like if anything, I think that, you're asking me like what I would do next. I feel like I want to help spread information in an artful way. Um,
Hmm.
and in a way that is like fun and engaging. Like I want people to know that like uh, our way of life is odd and strange and very temporary,
Yeah.
and that there actually is a way forward. And I think that it's a lot more happy than what it is here. It's a lot more fulfilling, and even if it means that people only live to the age of like 60 or something in the future because of we won't have maybe the ability to make plastics all the time or something like that. Like maybe we'll be happier. Like
Yeah.
Do you want to live to your like a miserable 120, or do you want to live a fulfilled life? You know, like these are the real questions to ask. Like you know, do we want to have stories associated with art? This is a really important question to ask. Like like are we safer is a more important question to ask. I don't feel like, I think like maybe like while the oil is still burning, yeah, but when it runs out, are we safer? No. Like we're all gonna have to figure it out and figure it out really fast, you know. So it's like I think that asking ourselves questions about whether we can hold multiple viewpoints in our minds at once and not be a fully techno optimist or a fully techno, you know, whatever the word would be for the
Cynic.
opposite of that, a cynic, yeah,
Yeah.
techno
Yeah.
cynic. Like, can you hold both of these?
Yeah.
Can you admit that there has been wonderful things technology has done for us? Can you also at the same time admit that technology itself is responsible for the the kind of the latest mass extinction? You know, both of these things are true. It's okay
Yeah.
to think that. It's okay to experience that. You know, like we are, as far as we know, an odd chemical reaction that happened on a planet in a on the very edge of a galaxy in a derelict part of the universe that somehow became self-aware. If anything, it's super rare, and like if we can just hold that in and understand and keep that understanding close to us and cherish it for what it is, then I really have a lot of optimism for the future. So yeah, I think like the long-winded answer is that I want to figure out a way to be able to continue to talk about these things um, off stage, because the part of the Papadosio ethos, like Papados, like this is a way of thinking.
Yeah.
Enjoy this point of view because I enjoy it. That's kind of like the way that I see Papadosio at this point. Like a lot of the music, hopefully, for some people, I'd like to think that it opens up the idea of thinking about things in interesting ways,
Yeah.
So how can I continue to do that, even with the band? Because to just touch on things about the hiatus, the band has always enjoyed more than anything else writing music together, and we talk about this a lot in the studio. That's where we really enjoy. It's not just formulating the timbres. It's and it's how things are going to go together, and what serves the song. Like that's another thing. Like I think that part of our struggle as a band has been that like now you have to have an extremely dialed in genre, a very dialed in brand, and we are just some idiots from the Midwest. Like we we don't have this like you know we all look different. You know what I mean? We don't have this like look, man. Like we don't have this like genre. We're not a specific like the way that music is disseminated and marketed these days. A variety show is kind of the last thing you want to be.
Yeah.
So like, um, but the world asks for a diversity of ideas. I think also that the fans that we have, the reason potentially that we had a fan base, at least we're able to bring one together, is because we just did what the song wanted. You know what I mean? And I think that some people enjoy that, um, because like if I have a musical idea and all of a sudden I have to take a hard right with it because it's not, or a hard left because it's not in my genre, then maybe I'm trying to force an idea through. You know what I mean? Like I think that there is a certain type of person, albeit a very small percentage of music listeners, that want the song to do what the song was going to do no matter what anyone said about it. And that's been what our kind of like, if you could take our music and sort of like try to make it, what is it? You know what I mean? It's trying desperately to do what the song is asking for and not do anything else. Like,
Yeah.
what does the song want? What is the song asking for? And how can we serve that idea in the most, like, I don't want to sound conceited when I say authentic, because that's not really like what I mean. I mean, like, I've always felt diminished in the presence of a damn good idea. Like Sam will bring one to the table, and I'm like, well, like this is cool. So like, what if this, and the emotion that comes up when something is wrong, you know what I mean? Like, has of course caused arguments in the band, but it also has, yielded really magical moments. Um, and so the fundamental question we ask when we're making music together is, what is the song asking for? What is trying to happen through us? You know what I mean? And that's like, I think that's special and potentially unique. Um, and so like, I don't think that the band is ever going to abandon the idea of making music together. Like, truth be told, we don't know what's going to happen next and don't have potentially any answers to give at the moment. But this is necessary because the band has never taken more than, I believe, 2 months off in 20 years, other than
Yeah.
COVID. Now, COVID, it was a special case, but nobody was taking COVID off. Everyone was freaking out. We were trying to
Yeah.
figure out like how to exist.
You guys are still playing shows too. You were doing the live stream tour
Yeah, that
and
too. And I think that people greatly underestimate the amount of work that goes into this project when you're not on the road. Like, it's not just
yeah.
like, at the, it's not just that a band needs to rehearse occasionally. Like, that's not even it. It's that there's like, like a band is fundamentally different than most touring acts these days. Like, I think it wasn't it this year, or maybe it was last year, where there was the first um, Casey Kasem Top 40 where there wasn't a band on it at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's you know, I think the expected thing for me to say is like, that's wrong, but I actually don't agree at all. I think that things change and that's okay. But I also think pendulums swing and things change and people are attached to story. And once we've played this whole like, TikTok song of the summer kind of like thing all the way through, we will crave that. We will crave what humans can do when their minds are synced up. We'll crave that. So that, that's this is just the present weather system. And so another way to talk about this is that we finally, probably about 3 or 4 years too late, got the message. Yeah, the world isn't built for what we're trying to do at the moment, and that's okay. All right.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
um, there's been a lot of interest in like people wanted me to like break down, why or what has happened to us and the mechanics of it all. But it's really hard to want to be that person, and I've realized that that's why nobody knows. Like, people pay a $60 ticket and they see a sold out show and they're like, this band is making so much money. And it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
nothing could be further from the truth. 90% of the people in the crowd probably make more money on average than a musician on stage. That's just the way that it is. So it's like, do I want that to be like my story? You know what I mean? Like, explaining the
I needed more money, so we stopped.
sad financial reality of, I don't think so. I mean, maybe, but it's like, I don't know what's actually useful and what do people want out of it? You know what I mean? I like, if it is that like touring becomes too difficult to do, then find what it is that people want, and it's okay, and find. I mean, really, even more than that, way more than that, is like find what do I want? You know what I mean? What
Yeah.
what does my family need? What scratches that eternal musical itch, like that's what matters. So I mean, maybe we'll be recording artists for a while. But I don't really think that, well I can't say that we're gonna not ever tour again either way. I just think it's pretty unlikely that eventually the pressure's going to build up. We're going to be like, oh man, like, it's so fun to play for people, and all the annoying stuff between those shows. Like, yeah, sometimes it is worth it to deal with that, because like the live experience is like second to none.
Yeah.
But I mean, what you're really witnessing, not just in Papadosio, but there's um, the bands are dropping like flies. It's not just our
I've
scene
noticed it
either.
too. Yeah.
It's all over the place, and it's mainly because the truth is, and I think that this also plays into the truth that's happening all over the place, is that there's not as much circulating free capital in the pockets of most people, and everyone can argue ad nauseum about like what has caused that, but what it is causing is the lack of diversity of ideas, the lack of diversity of art, the lack of
Hmm.
I honestly think that people are like we're having like a man problem, like there's like all the men are incels and they can't like find a partner. Well, it's because they don't have money. The fact is that like the three top things that for example, if we're gonna go like the straight gender route at the moment, you know what I mean? Like women are attracted to the ability for someone to provide. So like it's so funny that the party right now that's like manhood, everyone needs to be a man again, like isn't willing to share the wealth, you know,
Hmm.
isn't willing to start like disseminating generational wealth and understanding that like we shouldn't be able to pass our entire earnings throughout our lives to our children that don't deserve it. We need to pass that capital on to people and give them opportunity. Like that's what's happening 100%. Like
Yeah.
let's not kid ourselves. Like there's not as much circulating capital. There's not the wages isn't keeping up with inflation. Like it's just like obvious. When we were coming up, I could walk down the streets of Boulder, hand somebody a handbill, and they would be like, "Ooh, this looks fun. I don't know what to spend my money on tonight. I'm just out here spending my money." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's not the reality we're in anymore. It's not just that like people are looking at their phones. It's that they're looking at their phones and the phones are extracting anything that's left from um their wealth. Like there's all the mechanics that go into it. It's not just the advertising. There's so many things that extract wealth that people don't even know that it's like we're only halfway aware of it even happening. So like
Hmm.
bands will thrive. You will see that it's not just bands, but like diversity of ideas and art will thrive when there is more access to capital to more people. So like eventually the problem will get so big that everything cool disappears, like that's literally what it's so funny. Like the nerds that Elon Musk wants to be liked so much and he's just so unlikable and like he's literally making the world a consistently less cool place when all
Yeah.
he wants so much is to just be cool. It's just so
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
like comical almost,
Yeah.
it
I love that
and
he
so
he was like cheating on video games and like thought that that would get him some clout, and everybody's like, "Dude, you fucking
dude, it's
suck. Shut
almost
up."
sad, isn't it? It's almost
It
like
really is.
if he wasn't like pretty much a Nazi, like I would be, I would feel bad for him, but like, like man, it's just like that's literally what's happening. Like
Hmm.
the fact that we can't admit that we are witnessing not just in America but all over the world just that there isn't as much capital available to each individual person and that there's way
Yeah.
more capital available and now it's flowing upwards and it's flowing from young to old and from poor to rich. Like that's literally what's happening. Like
Yeah.
it's so funny that we
Yeah.
can't be honest about it. Like if you
Mhm.
say that you're a socialist and
Yeah.
therefore in America at least you're considered like somebody that's not like capable of like complex thought. Meanwhile, you have
Hmm.
you know a socialist country that is outpacing the United States in every major sector.
Yeah.
So
By you
what
saying
are we
this, you're putting
talking
my
about?
podcast on a list, just so you
Oh
know.
yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
ESA is like, wait, what's this? 21st century vitalism? 21st century
Delete.
socialism?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, I want to kind of like bring it back around though to like the bigger picture, like and that's that like the planet, like to me like the bigger picture is that the planet can't handle you know promising energy that we don't have, that we haven't mined yet, into the future. And it's not because like, of global warming, but because like that's just like that's like the overarching problem. Sure. You know what I mean? But like the existential threat to just life as it is right now, like, is a converging, like, uh who is it? Daniel Schmachtenberger calls it a meta crisis. Like, I really
Yeah.
like that because like we're entering a converging of, you know, every style of bifurcated crisis is happening at once, so it's between, fully decentralized uh, power is dangerous because we have weapons technology that one person can, like, bioweapons or whatever. Fully centralized power is also extremely dangerous because then you have, you know, the ability for everyone to be controlled with, like, 1984 style, like, you know surveillance, and all the things that come with that we know are also dangerous. Like, but that's like every single thing. So like, to me, it activates me. It gets me excited. I'm like ready to step into the role of a person who's willing to admit that I have been complicit in this mess that we're in, but mainly because I've been unaware, and mainly because I have only so much bandwidth to approach this, and capital and free time and all that stuff. Like, I think that, the reason that we eat the actual information in the world is because we feel so guilty about it. We feel
Yeah.
so responsible, and like that's so hard. Oh man, it hurts. And because we have to be men now, because of the way the election went. Now we have to be men. We can't cry about it. We can't, like you say, our nervous systems are arrested. Like instead, I think we're allowed to feel these emotions all the way through. We're allowed to weep for it. We're allowed to be hurt by this. We're allowed to be sad about it, and then we're allowed to do something about it. And then we're allowed to accept that we are inside of this system. Again, Nate Hagen says we're embedded in this. So this isn't anyone's fault until it's something we refuse to correct,
Yeah.
until it's something
Yeah.
we refuse to enter into a new way of looking at it all. So like, yeah, I mean, like that sort of characterizes like what I want to do. I'm going to try to figure out how I can leverage, the small amount of success I've experienced in my life as to something that can uh, move at least, what I can touch in a more positive direction. And if
Hmm.
everybody does that, like we're fine. We're totally fine.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's simple as that.
Well, I think what's really great about your skill set, as you're kind of mentioning, that we're all kind of numbing ourselves from feeling that pain from being embedded in this system and kind of proliferating the suffering that's causing all these issues. What I think is great about your skill set is that you actually are able to communicate those things in a way that gets past people's defenses. And that's what I actually have always appreciated about Papadosio, is because you go to one of these shows and you're having fun and it's beautiful and there's a lot of joy to be had. But then there's these messaging in certain songs that kind of come through that do kind of plant those seeds for extended conversation. And I think the musician really has one of the best skill sets for this time in kind of communicating some of these things and getting people to feel these feelings, whether or not they seek them out. They appreciate the sound, and then before they know it, they're listening to songs like Distant Days and, Method of Control and, stuff like that. It's just like, oh, and whether or not they sought that out, it's there now. And, I think that, whatever you do going forward, I'd be hard pressed to imagine you not doing that. It's a part of your creative signature, and the fact that you were able to do what you did with Earthcry and with the insects. I mean, that also to me is, it really is just a proclamation of what's possible through creativity. I think oftentimes people view their creative expression through the capitalist lens, where it's like I have to make a job from this and I have to pay my bills. That's a part of what was a part of my equation, and kind of what kept me from being totally committed to my creativity in that way. Was like, ah, fuck, I want to do this, but I don't like the job I'm working at. I have to make this work for me in a financial sense. But with
Mm-hmm.
what you're able to do, I mean, now that you also have a platform too, you can actually enact change in really unique ways through creative means. And I think that a lot of people who are listening to this, who are looking for a direction to go in, who are having creative impulses and still worrying about the world, that would be kind of my message, is like, you can use whatever is unique to your embodiment, and within that is actually one of the balms to the situation that we have. And nobody's going to be able to do it like you do it. Like, everybody has their own unique gift, but you have to kind of find that like creative demiurge that is trying to move through you in the same way that you guys are trying to respect the song that's coming through. And like, well, what does the song want? It's like, what does the story of your life want? And like, what motivates you? And can you kind of die to that in a way? Can you really give into that and allow that to take you to places you would have never had thought of? And that kind of also goes into the dualistic thinking. You have to kind of be able to break free from the narratives that you've kind of imposed on yourself, which for me, that's where I kind of come in, is like, in order to do that, you have to regulate your nervous system. So tying it all together, it's this journey into creativity, into your embodiment, into understanding the interconnectivity between you, your environment, the people around you. It's all one thing. You can't really pick one part of it out. But the more that we're kind of mired in stories and in this has to be this way, this has to be that way, the less likely you are to find that current that is going to take you to whatever your dharma is or whatever your meaning is. But yeah, I think that's what I love doing about this show, and getting to talk to people like yourself who are doing it in such a unique way. It really exemplifies something that is universal to every human. I'm talking to you right now, a musician doing what you're doing. The last episode was with somebody who dedicated his life to attachment theory and meditation, and did it in a way that was just so unique to him, and the healing that each of these paths brings, that's the way forward. It's not going to be this grand overarching political philosophy or a way of organizing society in this precise way, and you don't agree, so I'm going to fight you on that. It's like, you have to find what your thing is and then do that. And then I think if everyone's able to do that, I think the coherency with all of us will start to arise a little bit more.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Like, there is a calling, I think. Um, I think, let me back up. Like, so I think that the reason that what you're doing is very helpful to people is because there is a understanding in all of us that something is deeply flawed about the direction that we are headed, and they hold that in their body, and in their
Mhm.
psyche, and in their subconscious. And sometimes, because the world is so complex, we lack the um, ability to put it into words, to abstract it into language, but we know that there is something happening that we don't vibe with. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I don't think that it's just that we're sedentary or that we're looking at screens or any of that. I think that it's everything. I think that it's also that, you know because good ideas get leveraged by bad people, we don't remember some of the most important teachings, like that you have to constantly check yourself for inconsistencies with what your stated value system is. Like, you can easily become a demon, like, something that I think is worth questioning or asking the question of is, how am I not a demon? If I am complicit in any number of calamities that are occurring at any one moment. And I am of the culture that even created the word or the concept, then I think you should also ask yourself, how am I not an angel? Or how am I, these are things to ask too. But like, we have had teachers all throughout human history that have tried to ask us to remember to ask ourselves that question. You know what I mean? The feeding the right wolf, the devil on the shoulder, these are things that, like, as much as, for example, we keep going back to this, I know, and I hate that Donald Trump has to eclipse every fucking conversation that anyone has, but like, he's trying to project the idea that no matter what happens, he's right. And like, any good leader, like, asks questions and is trying to learn. Like, if you are not learning right now, and if you are not unsure about certain things, then you're probably not learning anything, which means you're probably not listening, which means you probably are not well informed, which means probably that your conclusions are ill-founded.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's informational. But let's even back up. I mean, in a more primary thing, are your value systems from your activities today in alignment with each other? You know what I mean? Like, I find myself being like, oh my God, what I just did was not in alignment with my value system. Raising kids will 100% do that to every human, because you will get frustrated.
You.
You will get frustrated at this helpless little thing. And then you will carry that the rest of the day and think about how you got frustrated. Like, we're potty training right now. Like, talk about frustration. That is hard. It is hard to do. Yeah. And I remember is frustrating.
Just last week, actually.
I'm still not potty trained.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like you get upset at a helpless child. And that's why I think that, like, I'm moving into this position or place in my brain where I'm realizing that the people that I connect with is not the people I used to connect with. And I'm so happy to have kind of like found my group, and like, there's a lot of us here, and I enjoy the people of this area a lot. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, the group of people that's willing to challenge themselves and say, I can be better than this. And I used to like run around with the, like, spiritual circles,
Yeah.
I find myself more and more yeet to just so much of it, because it's sort of in a state of capture, like a
yeah.
It's unfortunate, and it's not like those people are fundamentally bad people. It's that the question of whether their actions and their value system are lining up at the same time isn't there, because for example, if you need to be a life coach, right, you have to project that you are someone who has a good set of decision making all the time. And if you make a mistake, you may not be as valued as someone who could coach. And now we have these, courses that I get pitched on social media where it's like, how can you 10x your coaching business? You know what I mean? Like, and then there's these retreats where there's these coaches that are coaching coaches to 10x their business. And it's like, does anyone here see the flaw? Does anyone here see the crack in this whole thing?
Yeah.
You are literally, asking people to pay you for what a friend would do, because we're so devoid of real human connection. You know what I mean? So like, I guess what I'm saying is that, like, we could do this in a different way. And like, that if the leaders of the world are not able to say, I am a flawed individual and I need to check myself on an hourly basis, maybe even a minute by minute, if my brain can have that kind of capacity to check and make sure that my value system and my activities are in alignment with each other. If we can't do that, then all is lost, And And so I find myself identifying with people that are now saying, wow, I think we can do it better. I think I can do better. I think that the system can be changed to like help people with their value systems. And like there was utility to like there was utility to getting people together in a room, you know, like there is utility to getting people together in a room, like all of that. So like yeah, that is kind of where I also find myself like gravitating toward, is like groups of people that want to really question themselves
Yeah.
and diminish themselves in the idea that they could be better, as opposed to
Mm.
people that financially rely on the perception of their superiority to other people. Like
Yeah.
that's it's just crazy how big that, and that it's an industry. It's an industry.
It
Like
is, yeah. My favorite thing is the business coach who has done nothing but be a business coach, and he's going to tell you how to like manage your business when all he's done is just telling people how to do things. And it's just like there's something about this. Like, have you done anything yourself to be able to, equip me with the tools? Or, yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with just kind of the overarching spiritual community within the States. And I've plugged into more like Buddhist circles, and there's something about that I find to be really nourishing, in that they're boring as hell. In a sense, there's a dryness to it that doesn't attract the kind of people who use it as a way to prop up their personality. And like, I think that is kind of a very popular way to approach spirituality these days. Is it's like this. It's kind of just like you take on the garb, you take on the lingo, you like hold really uncomfortable eye contact, you touch your heart, but like the way you move through the day is actually like really disharmonious with the things that you say that you're about. So like for me, it's been a couple years now where I've just kind of gotten the ick a little bit from certain expressions that to me just are. I probably sound like an asshole saying all this. There's probably a lot of people who listen to the show who do some of those things, but for me, it's just a matter of like what's real and like authenticity. And I know that's like a pretty big word, but uh, I'm much more inclined to get along with somebody who has nothing in common with me, but is like really grounded in just who they are. There's something about that that's just like you're here, you're of the earth, you're solid. You don't have all these games going on, and there's something about that I think has created a community around me that feels so much more resourced than just kind of circles I've ran in the past, and feeling really light and in the clouds. And yeah, there's something about that, like finding a good stock of people that represent a lot of different beliefs and views and perspectives. And
yeah,
yeah.
two things. I think that the first thing is I don't mean to say that every life coach is a terrible person.
I
Or
do. I'm just kidding.
I think the thing that sucks is that there probably are, just like with musicians, there are incredible musicians that because they aren't good at branding and marketing and all that other stuff,
Mhm.
they get drowned out. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. Same things happening in that sphere and everywhere and in any pursuit. Now the things that I think it's really important also for the artists that are listening who are feeling bad about, you know, maybe like not being as big as they feel like they should be or something like that. Like, yo, just remember that like people don't value things that are good for them. Like just in general, like,
Yeah, yeah.
like everybody still eats Cheetos. Like it's like
Yeah.
people don't make good decisions for themselves. Like
Mhm.
this is not your fault. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like
Yeah.
we're in a state of capture by people who have figured out you know like where did we think this was all gonna go when like every other YouTube video is how to 10x your thing by using like this AI thing that like yo everyone's gonna do that. And then
Yeah.
what's going to
Yeah, yeah,
happen?
yeah.
Like, eventually
Yeah.
there won't be any substance left, like,
Yeah.
to anything. And so, what's cool about that, and what, like, I think is so awesome about that, is that eventually none of that will matter. And, like, what, at least in as much in a cultural sense, it won't matter. Because, like, humans will always crave story and connection, and like there's nothing that anyone can do about that. There's nothing that anyone can do to even glean money out of that at some point, because the story has to be there in the first place, and stories take time. They take, like real investiture. It's like we can't get away from that in our nature. We're still the people, like genetically and cognitively and whatever, that we're sitting around, burning fires, telling each other stories. We're still those people. We're not remotely adapted to whatever the hell this is, So like, stay the course is what I would say. Like, continue to create, continue to coach in an authentic way, aligned with your value system. Like, continue to do all that, like, or all is really lost if we can't, like, get past the idea that, yeah, you have to monetize this in order for it to be legitimate or valued or something like that. Like, I don't think that money even reflects value anymore. I think we've really gotten to the point where that might even be the case, that like, because value when it comes to money and then value when it comes to value itself have seemed to diverge.
Yeah.
Like there isn't, like right now, some of the most highly valued companies are doing some of the most like terrible things, right? So like, it's a funny word, isn't it? It's a funny word that like value is used in these contexts, because like I don't like the Google's latest like AI image or video processor, VO, I think is what it's called. It's indistinguishable from, like, for all I'm actually not me. I just was like, I'm tired. Instead of talking to Brett tonight, I'm gonna just generate myself in real time. I only need to make 780p or 720p video for him, so that's easy to render real time. Like what is it all like? Literally, we're approaching like peak meaninglessness at such a like rapid rate that like I really feel like this whole thing will flip, and like hopefully the soft landing that we all really want to have from all this will be such a, like, potentially initially painful thing, but such like a return to like what value actually means, and like what connection and like what being together means, and like, fuck, I don't know, happiness, like maybe that's like, it's so funny, like, like the, you can only dangle the carrot so far. If there's nothing on the actual other end of it, people are going to stop chasing the carrot. You know what I mean? Like, they're just they're going to call bullshit eventually and be like, we're going to get together. We're going to hang out with people. I've heard that, like, folk music, curiously, is on a meteoric rise at the moment, where you're just playing an instrument and singing.
I have a lot of friends in the folk scene here in Michigan, and so I've been kind of plugged into it a little bit more, and it's a total world that I did not know existed, but it is quite big.
Yeah, and coffee shop shows, sit down coffee shop shows, are making a comeback, which is so encouraging, because that's it right there. I mean, and really for me, like the regrettable thing about not playing shows for a while is that it is one of the last places where you can get people together and they'll put the phones away, and like, that's it's crazy that that's so rare, like it's so rare that like we have to have special contain, like, instead of it being the container, we have to have special containers for it to be normative, what I mean, to not have the device. Like, that is crazy. And I'm not making a claim that it's like bad or good. I'm making a claim that like the premise of the whole thing is wrong, is off, and is being steered by people with ideas of building a second civilization that doesn't have you in it. You know what I mean? So it's like, let's just, that's because that's such a hilariously flawed plan in and of itself. I already know that doesn't work, but like, between here and it not working, and between it not working and where we are next, like, I guess that's like where I'm mainly interested. Like that's what I want. I I want to know where it ends up. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
like, this is such like a page turner. I'm like so stoked. I'm like, I you know yeah, I definitely, I'm like everybody else. I'm like, sometimes I wake up and I'm like, oh, this is the world I live in. But I also, I'm like, I have to know
Yeah.
what's next. We recently watched Yellowstone,
Mm.
which is such a funny show because it's like obviously a politically charged like indoctrination attempt, but also I had to know what was going to happen. I had to know.
They got you.
Oh my god! Like I had to, I like binged like multiple. I mean, it's
Is
so
that the one
well
about the
put together
cowboys?
show. It's,
It's
it's
like a
about
ranch show, or
yeah, it's about like, how landowners in Montana are better at preserving the environment than environmentalists are, and they have
yep.
like these like dingbat environmentalists come onto the show and say really dingbatty things. You know what I mean? To like, it's just so funny. The whole thing is really funny. And then it's literally every episode there's footage of the same guy on a horse spinning circles with it and then chasing a cow. And it's like, I literally can't. I got to the point where I was like, I need to skip the guy on the horse that turns in circles. Like
Wait, what?
there
It's
must be
so
there
weird.
must be a huge amount of people that really want to turn circles on a horse. I
Yeah,
think it
yeah.
also might have been a who knows who funded it, but I wonder if it was like a weird like, Montana like tourism board, like,
Yeah.
I have no idea. I
It's a big
really,
sigh up to
I'm
get you to
talking
go to
completely out of my
Montana.
ass, but
Yeah.
like yeah, it's similar to how I feel like now. Like I want to get on my ground news app and see what nonsense just happened because like maybe I'm like uh slightly like masochistic, but like I also like, you know it's a page turner, man. Like what a
Yeah.
crazy time to be
Yeah.
alive. Are we
Yeah.
not also? Are you not entertained?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How the
Also, the
fuck are you
access to
bored?
it.
Yeah,
Yeah. The fact that, like, the moment something happens, like, I'm just like, oh, that just happened 7 minutes ago. And, oh, 14 minutes. It just, it's hard to not be
you're in
paying
a hot
attention.
war in 1 minute, and the next minute you're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's pretty much.
It's
I
so
mean,
bizarre,
come
man.
on, like,
It's,
yo, like my favorite is that like I still see some people like bored, and I'm
yeah.
like, what are you doing, man? You're blowing it.
Yeah.
Like, how could you be bored right now? There's so many things
Yeah.
that you can do right now that are like this could be the adventure of a lifetime to simply just try to figure out how we're going to survive ourselves. Like,
Yeah.
can that be your cure to your boredom? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's sort of I wanted to say this is a pitch. Because I imagine that some of your listeners may be going to Secret Dreams. I'm going to do a what do you call it? A workshop.
Oh, nice. I didn't know
Yeah,
that was happening.
yeah, I'm going to do a workshop. It's called Zoom Out, a reality check for Earthlings, and
I love it.
it's going to be funny because I'm going to talk about how like festivals are basically fossil fuel parties, and like I'm going to talk about where the energy
Uh-oh.
goes and comes from to get to Legend Valley,
Yeah.
and like, but I'm also going to like I'm going to like just I want to like really stoke people up and like charge them up, and I think I'm going to buy a bunch of seeds and just give them to everybody, and like
Oh, I love
I'm going
that.
to do a thing like it'll be a lot more organized than a podcast where I have like lots of facts and
Yeah.
um, but like if you're going to Secret Dreams and you are not having a mental health crisis at the moment, you should come to.
Disclaimer. So
If you
nobody
can
shows
laugh
up.
about like your likely imminent demise, then come to my.
Yeah.
um, I don't know. Yeah, like I want to utilize that space because I went to Bonnaroo 2011 or 12. I can't remember when Papadosio played Bonnaroo on a decently big stage. It was like that stage. And then they also invited me to be on this like eco panel, right? So I'm like sitting I'm like sitting there with these like people talking about like eco stuff, and like they had to turn us up because of the diesel generator next to us for that required crude oil to be, mined in,
Yeah. Wow.
Saudi Arabia. It's just like the whole thing was so absurd, like even then
Yeah.
to me. And so like the idea of an eco like workshop at a music festival, that everyone
Yeah.
drove to. It's the
Yep.
whole
Yep.
thing is so hilarious, but also like it deserves a shot. It deserves to be talked about in that setting because it's also where people are sort of realizing that the best things in life don't take any fossil fuels.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, holy crap! Like I think it deserves the hour that I'm going to give it. You know what I mean? And if
Yeah.
everyone like hates it, okay, you know what I mean? Like I got to shoot my shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I think it's going to be a good awareness practice because I think it's one of those things people don't really pay attention to the organization it takes to go into an event like that. But when you have somebody point out, like, this is what is actually behind the scenes, I think it can maybe, I mean, it expands your awareness of it, but also your appreciation of like how finite an experience like that actually is and how, in the grand scheme of all of life on Earth, that is such a rare opportunity to be able to participate in something like that. And the amount of resources it took to create that is just kind of unfathomable in
yeah,
a sense.
and it's also you are allowed to enjoy that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and I would like say probably that pretty early in the presentation, like the like whole like you know it doesn't work for the Christians either, for like the Baptist guy to get on stage and be like, you're all sinners.
Yeah.
Like there's a
Yeah.
reason
Yeah.
that the church is sort of diminishing, and it's not just because of
Yeah.
touching little boys. It's because like there's like the flaw of all that is that you're not presenting it in a way where it doesn't even need to, it's not even entertaining that it needs to be. What it needs to be
Yeah.
is engaging. And like
Hmm.
it needs like to be like somebody who's willing to like meet the planet like where it is, and like the human situation like where it is. It needs to be engaging. It needs to be something that like lights you up and gets you
Yeah.
excited. Like that has to occur, because I have always told my students in the music course that I teach that it is, if you wake up in the morning and you have 10 things that you could do as an artist, you have to think about those 10 things before you sit up and say, which one of these 10 things am I actually excited about? What is the thing that I'm excited about? If I do the thing that I'm excited about, then I will have more energy to accomplish the task.
Hmm.
So does that mean that today you were excited about finishing idea B, or does that mean that you are excited about not feeling the dread of having too many emails piled up in your inbox? Maybe you need to bust out your emails. Like follow what you're excited about, and you will get more done. So like if you
Yeah.
can get people excited about the idea of man, you gotta even avoid saying waking up. You got to avoid that. You can't even say it
Yeah.
anymore because
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah. It's
it's
got a
been so
connotation to it.
captured by like,
Yep.
oh man. But excited about the idea of realizing that half the world's humans are here because of the Haber-Bosch process with natural gas. Without natural gas, half the population of the world wouldn't be here. That's literally half of our calories right there using fossil fuels. Is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? No, it's a question. It's a question
Hmm.
you have to answer on a daily basis. It's something you're allowed to get excited about. You're allowed to think about these things. Like the fundamental underpinnings of society are so deeply misunderstood that like when I first read about them, uh, I lost months of things my brain could have been doing otherwise. Like I read Vaclav Smil's book called How the World Really Works,
Mm.
which is just a crash course in just like what is steel, what is you know what is agriculture, and like all this, just like how things actually happen. And it's so destabilizing once you know that kind of stuff, because all of a sudden everything looks different. Like all the things that are like injection molded plastic in a music studio, I realize are only available because of like crude oil. And I'm like, whoa. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
like polypropylene speakers wouldn't even exist without crude oil. What is crude oil? Like, crude oil is actually something to the order of like thousands of products, like in just plastics alone, let alone the things that we think crude oil. Like, we think crude oil, oh, that must be diesel and gas. Yeah, man. Well, it's actually like medical supplies. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It's like it's everything. You know what I mean? Like it's anything that you like what's your hobby, man? Well, likely, you know, fossil fuel, crude oil is like part of it. So is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? These are questions that I feel like people like, you know, deserve to think about and you know, like I don't know, like if you can get excited about it, then you can I think you become a much more effective person
Yeah.
and like you can have energy to do the work, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
that's like
Mm-hmm.
really what is needed because the people that have energy right now, like that are doing work, oh man, like they are like the oh man, they're just kind of the worst we've spit out, you know. So
Yeah.
like we
Yeah.
really need to empower each other and like get excited about the work ahead, because it's real for me now. It wasn't really real for me before I had kids. Like, and I'm not saying that like you need to have children in order for it to be real to you, but like I readily admit that I was a aloof, asleep at the wheel. What's the word? Like I wasn't connected to the story in the way that the story actually is unfolding,
Yeah.
until I saw this thing that's going to vastly outlive me and going to have to pay the bill.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? For in more ways than one, not just financially, but you know, in an energy standpoint, from a climate standpoint, from a biodiversity standpoint, insect abundance standpoint, all these things. That bill comes due and changes everything.
Yeah.
So like I can be afraid of it, but that's not going to yield any energy. That's going to take energy.
Yep.
I can
Yeah.
also choose to get excited and be like, hey, I am enjoying the fact that I actually know how this stuff comes together and like what can be done and what activities I can do to stay in alignment with my value system, uh, and learn, admit when I'm wrong, and try again, make mistakes, and yeah, fumble through the idea of turning this giant thing around and you know going a different direction with it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this idea of like understanding things as a way of kind of gaining energy from them. I think when you start to understand how things are made and how things work, you kind of enter into a more thorough dialogue with reality and the different elements of the things that you're literally perceiving. And when you have that deeper sense of understanding and communication with the things around you, you start to see that they can actually be a resource that actually it really kind of brings you more fully into the moment. And that's where energy actually comes from, is by being here online. And if you're just sleepwalking through life, if you don't really know the ins and outs of literally anything, then you're just a lot less likely to kind of fall into that kind of listless, kind of drifty. It's like I care about things, but I'm not really motivated to do much change because I don't really have the energy to make the change, even if I want to. I don't see how my actions could do anything because I'm not in communication with those things. You don't really know where you're falling short because you don't know how anything works.
We're actually going to call our song "Bypass Default." The project name in Ableton Live, which is the software we use to make music, was called Listless. Uh,
Well, yeah.
and the lyrics are long time colorblind. Please tell me everything is all right. Don't you rattle so. Just let me paint any picture I like. And it's like the idea that there's going to be some people, for example, at the music festival, that legitimately my workshop would be the opposite of them, and it would be like
Yeah.
physically painful to listen to me
Yeah.
talk,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's fine, you know.
Yeah.
Like I think that if you are a human, you have a right to exist and have whatever bad ideas you want to have. That's fine, you know. Like and you deserve to have a voice. You deserve to have all that stuff. But you know, I think that actual realism is so underrepresented, especially in America, because we're not really presented with reality at all,
Hmm.
because we're so financially removed from the reality that most humans have on the planet. So it's like, uh, I think we can also enjoy. points of view that take into account, you know, not just statistical data, but just like just just blanket statement understandings of how things occur. And so that's sort of the subject of that workshop. It's going to be on Saturday,
Okay, sweet.
I think, in
That's
the
like the
afternoon,
last day? Yeah.
the last day.
Is
Yeah,
it the last day? There's no Sunday,
yeah,
right?
yeah. There's no
Okay.
Sunday at Secret Dreams.
Yeah.
It's also Legend Valley is the first place I ever went to a music festival. I
What? No
was,
way.
yeah,
Wow.
I grew up really close to there. I was
Hmm.
in Lancaster, just down the road, 15 minutes away. And it's so funny that so many people go to this show and they have like Geometry Man and they got like all this stuff on it. And like the Great Circle is literally 5 minutes away and they don't know what it is. They don't know how amazing it is. They don't know what it's for.
You
And
say the
like
Great Circle?
the Great Circle, it's this
I don't think I know
what
what that.
many
I've been
people would
going
call
there
like
for.
a Native American burial mound, but it's
Oh,
so much more than that. Like the Great Circle is such an interesting thing. It's this giant mound in a huge circle with a kind of like a central altar, and that's the part that they've preserved. The Great Circle geoglyph, if you will, um, is so big that it's in farmers' yards. There's various and assorted different mounds all over the place in the area, and
whoa.
it's the exit right before Legend Valley. And
Wow.
I went to the Chipotle. It was like I can't remember what festival it was. I've been to so many there, but I went to the Chipotle and I'm eating, and I looked up and I saw a mound and I was like, "What is that?" And so I walked from the Chipotle over across the street and then climbed it and then walked into it and I was like,
Whoa.
"What am I? What is this?" And then
Wow.
like this place is so interesting because there's a lot of pseudoscience and nonsense about it, and that but like the all that stuff that we can know and what we can't actually know aside, um, it's obvious that the Great Circle was used to help predict when certain agricultural practices should happen. My
Mm-hmm.
father grew up really close to there in Millersport, and they used to follow the tillers because if you followed the tillers, there would be so many arrowheads, just arrowheads everywhere.
Oh, wow.
Uh, like the tillers would just pull up an arrowhead almost every time they went, and so
Wow.
kids would walk in lines behind them. And like the thing to understand is that like Legend Valley is situated in one of the most significant social gathering areas of um, European America in
Wow.
all of the country, and like nobody knows it's there. And a lot of them are like they have like Native American like value systems or something,
Yeah,
some
yeah.
weird like Americanized version,
Yeah.
whatever that is, and it's like they don't even register that it's like right there. And so it's like this is how, in my opinion, this is how this lends into the things that I'm like trying to talk about, like that we are so like removed from the very thing that makes our own lives possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if people could just be informed in an artful and fun way, I think this all changes. So how can I do that? Like I want to know what that is. Like I've tried singing on stage, and I think that I don't think that it was a failure. I don't think that it was a success. I think that it was the work. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
so. In what form does that take place? Maybe it does take place in that form again. I think that it has to be achievable and believable though, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
so like hopefully um the circumstances will change in order to allow that. Uh so yeah. Um Sorry I've been ranting so much. I
No,
feel like
no,
I've
I
been
love it.
ranting.
I'm looking forward to seeing whatever you do next because there's definitely a passion there that I think, as a testament to the power of Papadosio and the fan base you guys have kind of accrued. There's something there that you have an ability to be able to communicate pretty effortlessly. So I'm excited to see whatever your next creative pursuit is going to bring for you and everybody else. But yeah, we are kind of getting to that time. So I am sweating a lot in my room. I had
Oh, that's
mentioned
right.
my AC is kind of done for. So yeah, I want to leave a little bit of time for you to kind of share with people what you have coming up, where they can find you, if they want to learn from you with Seed Stage. Just, yeah, how can people stay plugged in with you?
Okay, so obviously, the Papadosio is my main musical project, um, and we're taking a hiatus from touring, but yeah, you can still stay up with us on all the socials and things like that. Earthcry is my solo project, and I've never really put like the kind of effort that even remotely eclipses like the effort that I put into Papadosio. But I do think that I will utilize that project moving forward to um, try to try to do good things with it, whatever that looks like. Because I
Mm,
mean, there's this intersection between music and trying to do good things. Seed to Stage is a YouTube channel. Um, that's the way that anyone can access it, and I teach the music software Ableton Live. And there's lots of videos just on YouTube, so you can, if you want to, learn my weird approach to music. That's I kind of just don't really hold anything back and just love. I try to upload at least one or two videos a month on there, and then if you're into it and you enjoy what I do, I teach music courses in a Discord, a global Discord where there's people from all over the world sharing insights and resources to try to make it as a musician. Um,
mm.
and then, yeah, outside of all that, we're just hanging out here in Asheville. I'm building a music studio in my basement right now. I learned to woodwork over the last year. To learn to woodwork is a loose term. It could be a lifelong pursuit to get really good at it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm building a purpose built space. We actually dug a hole under our house for it, which was
Wow.
totally wild. And I'm
Yeah,
going to
that's
be putting
insane.
out a video showing like how that happened because I think it's pretty unique to drive a tractor under your house and not knock it over, and it's
Wow.
pretty
Yeah.
silly things we did. But that's going to be done this year. So
Sick. Are you going to be
yeah,
kind of like offering recording services for people, or is this just for the band? Or
yes,
yeah, okay.
it's going to be all kinds of things. I also am a huge music fan. Um, and maybe that's why I did it. I wanted to listen to music in the most like at the time of the build, this will be the most state of the art listening room potentially in the whole state.
Wow.
Because I hired this guy, an acoustician, John Brandt, who's designed rooms for like Chris Lord-Alge and like all
Mm,
kinds of really amazing engineers. He designed the space. I did not. I'm just following his
wow.
blueprint. Someone's going to come along the line, and the latest technology will come out, and they'll have a better listening room than me. But as far as I know, if I pass the tests and we do the measurements, and I can get my certifications, this will be a really great listening room. And I kind of did it because I realized that I like to work with my hands, and it was honestly, if you can do it yourself, it's pretty inexpensive to do. If you hire somebody else, it's prohibitively expensive
Hmm.
to do. So, yeah, I kind of did that also to increase my ability to teach effectively
Yeah.
and help my students with their mixes. And I used to do mastering a lot for other artists. I have done work for La Special, Pigeons Playing Ping Pong, lots of other bands in our scene. I don't know if I'm going to go back that route again. I'm obviously making my own music, and I have a feeling the band is going to record at some point.
Yeah. Sick.
So that is kind of the main thing, and also I want my kids to have a unique like experience. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah. Yeah.
like if my kids want to do if they want to be whatever they can be whatever, but I want them to have a jam room. I want them to be able to enjoy musical expression if that's what they want to do with their time. And I also want to be able to shut the door and everything is silent, and I
Yeah.
get
Oh,
my
wow.
couple hours a day to do my thing, damn it. Like,
Yeah.
that's
That's
also the other,
important. Yeah.
that's the other thing, reason for a soundproof room. But I also can
Yeah.
crank up, as far as I know, I can crank up things to 85 dB A weighted um, at full blast, and it should be
Wow.
functionally silent upstairs if I
Wow.
did it right. So
That's
that's the.
insane. Hell yeah. I wouldn't expect anything less from you.
We'll see. We'll see.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of the night. I will probably see you at Secret Dreams. I'll try and make your workshop and see how many people bounce out or stay and see what
There'll be
happens with
5
that.
people left at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be me and my friends.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds
awesome,
good.
man. Well, thank you again. We will catch you next time.
Okay. Much love, Brett.
Yeah,
See ya.
yeah, you too. All right, everybody, that was the episode. Thank you so much for listening all the way through until the end. One more deep bow of gratitude for Anthony as well for joining me on this conversation. If you want to stay plugged in with what he has going on, feel free to follow him over at Earthcry on Instagram, or you can stay in touch with Papadosio by checking out their website, listening to some music on whatever your streaming platform of choice is. If you want to learn from Anthony and really begin your music journey proper, then I'd recommend seedtostage.com, also his YouTube channel, Seed to Stage. There's a lot of really quality tutorials on there, and you can engage with the man himself and get some direct feedback. I have worked with him, and I can vouch he is very good at what he does. If you want to support this show, head on over to patreon.com/21st Century Vitalism and consider becoming a member. Beyond that, you can always follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, or subscribe on YouTube. Thank you again so much for tuning in. I do this show for you, and we will catch you on the next one.